Real talk, real life, real sisters, and real Southern. Welcome to Southern Sisters. We're Megan, Lindsay, Courtney, and Evie. 4 sisters with 16 kids between us, running small businesses, chasing big dreams, and keeping it real along the way. Each week, we're diving into all things self-care, motherhood, business, and faith, sharing the good, the messy, and the hilarious moments that come with it. Whether you're striving for balance, chasing your dreams, or just trying to keep the kids fed, we're here to remind you that you're not alone. So grab your favorite drink, get comfy, and let's chat. Welcome to our episode of Southern Sisters. We are so glad you're here. Thank you so much for taking your time to listen to this podcast. It means a lot to us. I have to say that the greatest joy that I have in doing this is that I get texts from friends who listen and love it, and I get messages from my daughter who listens and loves it. And I love the feedback. It really does make it worthwhile for us to be doing this. Okay, so our episode today is about faith in action and what that looks like. But before we jump into that, our icebreaker question for today is, how has this podcast changed your life? Now, by the time this episode airs, it'll be like the end of 3 months of us doing this. And it seems crazy to me to think that we've already put so much out into the world. But I think that the greatest blessing for me with this podcast is that I truly feel more connected to each of you than before we started doing this. Like, it's so easy just to not take the time to get together because we're all so busy and we're all at such different points in our lives, that having this space to talk and text and have our group Marco Polo, it's just been, quite frankly, lovely. Mm-hmm. And I don't know, I feel like I'm coming out on the end of life with being in the mire with kids. And sometimes when it's that way, it's really hard for you to have time for friendship. And family really is everything. And I love that we are able to share this together because I feel like I have girlfriends.
Oh, beautiful. Oh. So the way that the podcast has changed my life so far is I feel like I have been like more of an open person. Like, it's helped me to like open up more, because like if you know me, it takes a lot for me to like share things, be open about things, be vulnerable. I kind of like have to like really, really feel comfortable. And of course I feel comfortable with you guys, but like sharing this stuff for other people to hear is not something I would normally do. And one thing that I'll share with that is Courtney actually has a group that she does every month. It's kind of like, I guess you could compare it to like a Bible study or like a book club, but we get together once a month at her house. And at the meeting for the last month, I found myself like actually talking and like sharing things, which is also not normal for me. And so I just feel like that's one thing that I've noticed about myself.
It was great.
You feel like it's spilling over in like other aspects of your life too?
Yeah. Like
this confidence to speak.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I love that.
That's cool. I feel like I get to be my whole self here and I love it. Like talking about the things that are the most important things to me in business. It's you try to be very professional and very respectful. I try to be very respectful of other people's beliefs. And so you're like constantly withholding a part of yourself, or like with my kids, I'm withholding a part. Like you just feel like you're these different pieces of yourself. And I feel like this podcast, I just get to be full me, for better or worse.
But I think it's the best part.
Yeah, it just is so comfortable to just like be on a couch. This podcast, we wanted to wear jammies because we're just gonna be comfortable. Yeah. We're moms. We wanted to wear jammies. This is how we would dress at home, right? Mm-hmm. When we're getting stuff done and kicking butt, like I think it's so fun, and so it's just been fun to be ourselves completely and to share that with the world.
I love it. For better or for worse.
Yeah.
Right?
What about you, Court?
So I have had a lot of things change since I started doing this podcast. We started the beginning of January, and then when we started in January, I was the president of our networking group, and I was business owner. I was doing all my consultations. I was helping open enrollment this past year. I was helping over 500 people individually with consultations. So it ended up being like 15 people a day that I was having to talk to. Twins, 5 kids. And there were some things that happened that then I got asked to be in the women's ministry, is what I tell people that aren't members of our church, but in Relief Society presidency, if you know about our callings and stuff. But whenever I have been thinking a lot about like I've been in this program, or just been thinking about what my dreams are and what my vision is for myself in 20 years and how I can be that person that I want to be in 20 years from now, and knowing that that's within me and wanting to share my voice, thinking about the podcast. And anyway, so there's just all of these wheels that were, plates that were spinning in the air. And as I thought about what I want, what I want is to have the freedom financially to be able to, be a mom and to serve in the church, to just serve God. Those are the most important things to me. And I feel like sometimes when you're growing your business and you're building your business, you get stuck in being a boss, like you're just killing it, right? You just get, and that is, you can crave that.
It's
that
gratifying.
Feeling of like helping people and translating for them and being the superhero they need that day, like it can be amazing, and it is amazing, and I love what I do. But Chloe was like, I would never do what you do, Mom. You work all the time. And like, there's little things your kids say sometimes where you're just like, you don't even know what you're talking about. And then there's other times that it's like a wake up call for you, where it's like, you know what? I love my job, but my kids don't get to see that. They get to see a mom that works from home and that's on her computer all the time because she's trying to do everything herself. And so doing this podcast, I felt like my priorities were not where they needed to be. And I trained my assistant to help with consultations, and that has been a game changer.
Since we started the podcast?
Yeah, since we started the podcast.
Wow.
So I was doing them all myself, and then I trained her. And then I noticed that Chloe asked me for help with her homework. She's in 7th grade. She asked me for help with her homework one night. She was just overwhelmed. She's in 3 exceptional classes, and it's hard. And this is the first time she's ever asked me for help with her homework all year. And I don't know if that's just because I was around or if that's because she's independent too and has not had any problems. But like, helping with homework is like a normal mom thing. And I haven't had to do it at all the whole year because she's so amazing at doing it herself. But I was like, I don't want to be the kind of mom that puts everything, like that they feel like they have to be responsible for every single little thing and they don't have any help if they need it. And I remember growing up feeling that way. Like, I don't feel like, I needed much help or I ever asked for much help. I just kind of did everything myself. I did my homework on my own. I did my projects on my own. Like, I never, except for the Skittle projects, skipping on the Skittles the night before. Anyways, that's another story, but
I don't know that.
anyways, I was like, I want to be there to help my kids with their homework, and I need to figure stuff out. And so I didn't realize how much stress my networking group was on me, being the president of 40 business owners and having to figure out everything for each meeting and running the meeting every Wednesday morning for an hour and a half. And like, it was just exhausting. And I'd been doing it for 2 years, and
when I realized, I was like, okay, I want to accept this calling in my church and help the women in church because that's what I want to do. That's where I want to be. But I also need to be there for my kids. And so I was just like, something's got to give. And I can't do everything. And so I stopped doing the networking group. And that was a huge sacrifice for me because I love those people. I love being with adults. You know, now that I'm not doing that every Wednesday, I'm home a lot more. And it's like, I'm like a stay-at-home mom now that works. And it's been such a huge adjustment for me. Like, I'll ask my stay-at-home mom friends, like, how do you do it?
Yeah.
Like, normally people are like asking me, how do you do it?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, how do you do it? Like, for real? How do you do it?
It's exhausting.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
But it has been so nice to just feel that stress off of me. And I got my biggest client the week that I said yes to this calling at church. They just found me online and walked into our door. And I was just like, okay, God, I see you. Right? Like,
Thanks for showing up.
yeah, I was just like, okay, God has got me. And I have to trust that if I put my priorities where they need to be with my kids and with, with God, then everything else just will fall into place. And that's been a huge lesson that I've had to learn. And that has come from being inspired and empowered in my motherhood. And how, like, that is what we talked about. That's why we're doing this podcast, is to empower moms and families and make them know that what they're doing is important.
It's everything.
Yeah, it is everything. And you only get them for such a short amount of time. I was like, Brooklyn's going to kindergarten in the fall. And so I was like, I need to just be home and be there for them, So it's been amazing.
It's true.
Thanks for letting me share, guys.
They grow way too fast.
They do.
All right.
Cut it out, Megan.
I know. Like, too soon.
Okay. It's going to be.
That is actually a perfect segue into what we're talking about tonight.
Yep. As how faith in action, like those small steps, how every day you have the chance to live. And I took a class one time and I loved it because they talked about how there's two types of action in life. You can either have forced action or you can have inspired action. And the difference between the two is, in one, you are actively seeking what you should do next. And in the other, it's more like you're playing defense, like reactive to whatever's happening to you. And I made the choice a couple of years ago that I really wanted to live by inspired action. Well, what does that look like? Well, that looks like on the daily, I do things like pray to know what I should do. And I've talked about this a little bit, like with my faith journey, I've learned to be a very good listener. And so it's like, I'll just say a prayer, pour out my heart, pour out the things that are weighing down on me, literally imagine myself handing it over to Christ. And when I do that, I just always close my prayer with, what is the most important thing that I need to do today? And then I'll just sit there, and through the practice of meditation, it's almost like my mind just floods with specific tasks. And I have my handy notebook right next to me, and I'm able to write down just those things that come into my mind. And I know in that moment that it's holy time. I mean, sometimes it's in the car, still holy time. Sometimes it's whenever I'm sitting in my special favorite place on the gray couch in the blue room with the sunlight streaming in, and it's perfectly melodious and everyone's doing what they're supposed to be doing. Sometimes it's like sitting at my desk, squeezing it in between working on travel or editing pictures and kids are screaming in the background. I can still find those moments of holy, and whatever I write down is what I know this is the most important thing to do today.
I love that.
Yeah. But it's something that takes a lot of practice. It's not going to happen
Overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did that look like when you had little kids, though?
Like sometimes it was just like in the carpool line as I was dropping somebody off to preschool, or whenever they were younger, I would try to get up earlier.
now I teach seminary and that's impossible.
Yeah.
So, but it also helps that they're bigger. So I have more quiet moments once I get everyone settled doing what they need to be doing, which is great. I wanted to share a little story that I have of what this looks like for me. Some of you guys know we homeschool our kids. I made a reel for social media a couple of weeks ago, and it was like, what would you say to your younger self? Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, like, I would tell my younger self, we're homeschooling our kids. And like, she literally looked at me like she was going to throw up, because there's no way. Like, we literally spent 12 years waiting for everyone to get in school so I could have the freedom to create and to
do what you want to do.
Edit pictures and it not be midnight.
Yeah.
Like having to squeeze in work when the kids are in bed or during nap time. And like, it's just so frustrating sometimes, but
It is.
it was November 2023. It was the beginning of the month because we weren't quite at Thanksgiving yet. But I remember one of our goals was we wanted to have more cash flow because our daughter oldest was a senior in high school. And I was like, we need abundance. And so I had spent weeks praying, like, Heavenly Father, pour down the windows of heaven on us. We just need abundance. How can we have more abundance in our life? And I'd say this prayer and I'd feel like I wouldn't get anything. But I kept praying it, because when you don't get answers, you just keep asking, right? You're like, you know, this is important. We have the best of goals. You know, we'll do so much good with abundance. Ben does a great job providing for our family. We have everything we need, but sometimes it would just be nice to not
To have a little
Just
bit
a
more
little bit
than just enough.
just enough. Like, we make all our bills, we pay everything, but like, it'd be so great to just have more than enough. Can we just have a little more? And I don't think that's greedy.
No. Same.
Right?
No.
And so I remember being prayerful, and one of those thoughts that came into my head, like about like, what should you do today? It said, you need to homeschool Bennett. And I'm like,
Backstory: Bennett is not.
Bennett is amazing.
Bennett and Megan have very different personalities, and they just clash a little. But Bennett is a genius, and he's incredible, and he's awesome.
And he's such a good boy. But
He is such a good boy.
But we really do. Like, if
Their personalities just clash.
personalities, he is fire. I am water, constantly putting out his fire. That's just what I do. I don't mean to, and he doesn't mean to, and I know, like, I look at him and I'm so amazed, because I know one day he's going to rule the world.
Be president.
Totally.
Like, he's going to be incredible and amazing. And all of these things that are so frustrating for his small self are going to be so incredible for his big self. So if you have a difficult one that sometimes you struggle with, just recognize that those qualities are going to make them so successful as adults. But the thought of homeschooling him, I was like, oh no, I can't do this. I can't do it. But it wouldn't leave me alone. It just wouldn't leave me alone. And so I talked to Ben, and that was like the biggest miracle, because he's always been like, homeschool, nope. Like, homeschool, no way. Like, why would you even do that? What are you thinking?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, nothing about this makes sense. I was praying for abundance. I'm not going to have time to work. He's going to be home. And so I approached him and I was like, hey, Bennett. And he, you could tell that he was a little bit bored with school. I had been talking with his first grade teacher, and they were saying that like they wanted to get him tested for the gifted program. Like, he is a first grader. He's reading on a fourth grade level, like really smart. But I went up to Bennett and I was like, hey, bud, what do you think about mom being your teacher? And he said, well, if you were my teacher and I took a quiz and got all the answers right, could I please learn something else? And I was like, yep. And he goes, all right, I'm in. And I was like, oh.
So sad.
Poor kid.
Oh my gosh. Or do we have to keep drilling it for months and months? Same thing.
It's crazy. And so I was like, okay. So I told him, I was like, okay, I'm going to homeschool you. Well, then I tell my fourth grader.
Yeah, you did.
I was like, Lily, I think I'm going to pull Bennett out at Christmas. You know, he is having struggles. He's really ahead, and it's causing him to not listen to the teacher because he wanted to read books when she was trying to teach, and it was frustrating. He was bored. And I really didn't want him to be labeled as a troublemaker.
Right. Because he's not.
Because he's not. It was just not doing, well, anyways, he wasn't doing what he was told. And so it's fine. Not fine. Whatever. Moving on. But Lily was like, you're going to homeschool Bennett? And I said, yes. And she was like, well, what about me? And I was like, well, what about you? Because you got a girl gang and you have all your little bestie friends and you have so much fun at school. Mm-hmm. She's so social. Mm-hmm. I was like, why would you want to do this? And she was like, you know, Mom, she said, so Tennessee passed this law for 3rd grade the year before and said if you did not pass your TCAP testing, then you had to either do summer school or stay. It was just a whole hullabaloo. It was not fair.
The grade.
Yeah, it was not fair to the teachers. It was just it was a time where legislation got in the way of education, if you ask me. And it made me very sad. But Lily was kind of on the line, not because she didn't have good grades, because she did, but because she struggled with ADHD. And so some days,
taking.
yeah, sometimes she would take a test and be totally fine, like straight A. And then other times she'd take a test and look like she'd never seen it before. It just
That's my
depends.
girl. That's me. Struggle is real.
Yeah. And so she had like extra tutoring after school. And after probably 6 months of this, she developed this weird cough that would just come out. It would just be like
a tick.
Yeah. And so we took her to the pediatrician probably 3 times. They checked her lungs. They checked everything. And they said, this is just an anxiety tick. And it would kick up when they were doing case testing, which is like practice. And so she'd come home and I'd be like, what are you doing at school this week? Case testing. Oh, got it. Okay. So summertime after 3rd grade mostly goes away. 4th grade starts and it starts back up again. And so when I told her I was pulling Ben out of school, her response to me was, well, if I did school with you, would I have to take TCAP? And I said, not in elementary school, maybe in high school if we wanted you to, but you wouldn't have to do that. And she burst into tears, threw her arms around my neck and said, Mom, please, I don't want to be the girl that coughs anymore.
Oh,
So sad.
And I was like, well, okay. So the great thing about that was we were able to get them the same language arts curriculum because he was on 4th grade level.
that's crazy.
And so we do language arts together. They do math separate and we'd have science stuff. We signed them up for like a rock climbing class.
Are they thriving, Megan?
They did a co-op. I mean,
They're doing great in school, aren't
She
they?
coughing still.
No, the cough has completely gone away.
Oh.
Wow, that's amazing.
Is Bennett bored or is he just gets done so fast now, doesn't he?
He does get done really fast, but he's filling his life with other things. Like he really loves drawing right now.
Oh, that's cool.
And he likes Minecraft, but we have limits on all of that. So they don't get to just play video games all day, which is good. But they're doing really great. Bennett was the kind of kid that I think he would pick up like every bad habit of everyone in the room.
Yeah.
And not having that, just being around his siblings all day has been really good for him to kind of grow into who he is.
Yeah.
Without having to be who people expect of him.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, walking this journey has been really hard. And I feel like the most eye-opening thing to me was I didn't understand. Like when I was asked to do this thing, I felt like I was going to lose myself. Like I had 2 years where I didn't have kids home. And I felt like I was just coming to the point where I was figuring out what I like to do. I was enjoying going to lunch dates with friends. Like I literally had a friend tell me like, well, you had to go ruin our plans by homeschooling your kids. Like we had so much fun when you,
That was me, right?
no, when you had kids in school.
Yeah.
But
I just got you back.
It was Ben that said that.
like, we'd have lunch dates and it would be like our date night. And I just didn't understand. And so in a lot of ways, I'm not going to lie, I closed off myself from God for a couple of months because
why?
Because I felt Like, I didn't want any more of his inspiration. Like, he was asking me to do this hard thing. And it was like I was walking around like this. Like,
Yeah.
don't you tell me. Nope.
I don't want any more hard things.
And in a lot of ways, it made it harder because I wasn't open to the inspiration of what my kids needed and what they needed from me, which is all part of walking that faith road, right? And to see the difference between when I was going and asking and when I stopped because I didn't want him to tell me something else. It was really, really hard. It was really hard. Fast forward a couple of months, we have this experience when we're together all the time. Some days are really great. There was a day that Bennett packed a bag and like said he was running away. And so what did I do? I threw him in my truck. Not literally. I said, come on, we're going to take a ride. Where are we going? You're going to your dad's office. And I told him, I dropped him off with Ben and I said, here's his books. He can come home. I'll come pick him up when he's done. Don't be fun, Ben.
Yeah.
You're not punishment, but don't be fun.
Yeah, right.
Just be. I need you to just be the person that helps me get this done today. Thankfully, we haven't had those this semester, but new shift. My big boys saw what we were doing and they're like, hey, we want that too. We want to be home. And I'm like, no, you don't. You don't want to be home. And they're like, yeah, we do. Why? So we listed all the reasons why they wanted to be home.
Which was shocking, to be honest.
It was.
They all had their friends and stuff too. I never thought they would want to be home too.
No, they're like, we want to try this. And the difference between the first few months that I did it, when I was walking alone, being closed off to inspiration, and the second few months when I did it with these boys, partially because it was forced. Like, I started helping Ben teach seminary, which is Bible study in the morning, and being forced to study the scriptures to teach teenagers kind of opened back up that window to heaven. And it was through that I felt like I was getting inspiration again. Like, you need to reach out to this person to talk and do this for them. And they really need to do this. And my son, McKay, was like, we were looking at something online and this ad came up for a homeschool baseball team. It's like, you can do that. And it has been so beautiful to see them all excel and grow, and abundance doesn't look like I thought it would. It doesn't look like a bigger bank account, unfortunately, but it looks like
30 eggs on your counter. You're rich.
I am rich. It does look like 30 eggs on the counter, but
Megan has chickens.
yeah, we do. That's another story.
Yeah.
But it is having an abundance of time together,
Yeah.
which once we had Kate leave, we recognized how important that was and how quickly it's going to go. We have an abundance of learning available. Like, we can learn anything we want together. Right now, we're doing an online study with the older boys about totalitarianism, and we're studying these novels and like talking about what this is, because I feel like as young people growing up in our world, they're going to need to recognize what tyranny looks like.
Dang.
Well, it is. It is. But it's like we have an abundance of laughter and noise in our home right now.
Yeah.
That's cool. It has been insane and it has been amazing. And it's all by doing those little steps. And I love sharing that story with people because, number one, it doesn't look anything like I thought it would. And number two, it's got the good side and the hard side. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very good way to share both because it was so different.
And out of that came this podcast.
Yeah.
You started getting inspiration again, and then all of a sudden, here we sit late at night doing this podcast.
Yep.
And I do want to make one thing clear that I think is really important. We were talking about before we got on here, and just being vulnerable with you guys. Like, every single one of us that are sitting here talking are like, number one, we're very insecure about this. And by insecure, I mean like worried about what we're talking about, or worried about how people are going to think. And all of the thoughts are coming into our head. Like, why are we doing this? Do people really care what we have to say? All of those things are flooding in our minds, but we have had a relationship with listening to inspired action and doing the things that God wants us to do enough to know that when that happens, that means it's going to be something good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the things that are the hardest to do are usually the ones that are worth the most to fight for and to do. And so as you're listening to us, I want you to remember, like, we're just moms who mess up all the time, and wives who say things they shouldn't say. And we say things to our kids, or we do mess up in our business, or whatever the case may be. Like, we're so human, and we're just here trying to do what we feel like we're supposed to do.
It's just uncanny to me how it doesn't look anything like I thought it would. You know what I mean?
It never
Yes,
does.
I know exactly what you mean.
It reminds me of like this picture. I don't know if y'all have seen it, but it's basically like Jesus, and like you're asking Jesus for something, but like behind him is something like better than what you're asking him for.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't always look like what you think.
It's like the bear story, right? It's like a teddy bear.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's like,
Evie, we'll show that picture this week online, because I want to see that.
I want to see it too. That's a really good story about someone is saying like, give me your bear,
Yeah.
your most loved thing, but then they replace it with something even better.
The journey can be incredible. And I just love those small things that we can do every day to try and grow closer. One of the things that I have loved the last few months is I have been reading this book. It's called The Surrender
Experiment.
The Surrender Experiment. I loved it. I was like, this book is mind-blowing.
It is.
It's the story of Michael Singer, of his life, and how when he was an economics professor or a student getting his doctorate, he was listening to the voices in his head that were telling him, like, when an opportunity would come up or when something would happen, like that voice in your head that's like, don't do that. Don't. It's the voice in our head with this podcast.
Nobody cares what you think. Nobody
cares
wants to
what-
hear.
Nobody wants to listen to what you have to say.
Yeah.
For
Who
me,
are
it's
you?
you're a loser.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah. Nobody wants to. And he was like, how do I get that to be quiet? And so he began this journey to quiet his mind. And he decided that through the course of his life, he would just do whatever opportunity came to him. He would do it with his whole heart, 100%, give it the best that he had.
And not listen to the inner voice.
Yeah.
Like, pay attention to what the inner voice says, and then just do what he felt like he needed to do. Like,
And in his book, it's like the inner voice is just the universe. But I love the inner voice being God, and look at Heavenly Father constantly trying to get us and push us and nudge us in that inspired action to get us to be the whole person that we truly are. It's like trying to figure out who we are.
5 years ago, when I started this whole inspired action thing, I have a mentor and a life coach and spiritual coach, or whatever you want to call her. Her name is Heather. And she's one of the most incredible people I've ever met in my whole life. And she has gifts and talents that are so different from anyone else I've ever met. And she is somebody who has helped me look at myself and figure out lots of things, and given me a lot of tools that have helped bless my life. She's the one that taught me how to do this and how it starts. So all of this sounds great, but if you're not sure where to start, it feels really overwhelming. And so when I first started this, the hardest part for me was she was teaching me how to meditate. And meditation is really hard when you have little kids, like you were talking about, and noise and people needing your attention all the time. And so I call it my 15 minutes of focus every day. And what I would do is I would shut my bedroom door and I would turn on YouTube. I have this YouTube channel that I love that has all like meditation music. And she told me which ones. They're like, all these hertz and sound waves have different things that they do for you. And I didn't know about any of that back then. And she was like, this is the one you do. So I was like, okay. And so I would turn on that music really loud and I would turn my phone on Do Not Disturb and I would just try to quiet my mind. And that took weeks to just stop the inner voice. And I don't know if any of you guys are like that, but stopping the inner voice is sometimes the hardest part. So I remember being like, okay, but things keep creeping in after weeks of doing this. And she was like, Lindsay, those are the inspired thoughts. Quit cutting them out. I was like, oh, okay. She's like, you've learned how to quiet your mind. Now let those things in. And I was like, that was okay. I was just getting distracted. So practice on quieting your mind first. And then pray or like wait for the guidance. So whether it's inspired action, whether it's a gut feeling that you have, like wait for those things to come in. And then that is what I call like my big three when I'm teaching in my coaching program, is the big three are like your big three priorities for the day. So that's what I always ask, like, help me know what three things, if I do nothing else, these three things are taken care of. And then I know they're done. And usually it's way more of a list now, but getting those top three things in order are really important. And so waiting for those things to come and finding the silence, my secret place, not my secret place, but the place where I have quiet the most is in the shower because no one can bother me. No one's there and I can pray and I can think and I can wait for those inspiration to hit. And some days I don't get, like, that's my only 15 minutes of focus. But having that, so the first step is quieting your mind, getting some alone time, go on a walk, sit outside by yourself, whatever you do, and then just wait for those inspired actions to come. And then the most important thing is when you get those thoughts, like Megan talked about, is you have to act on them if you want them to keep coming. Mm-hmm. So do what it says to do and do it with your whole heart, and it's going to change your life. Yeah. And do it afraid and do it insecure and do it anyways.
Mm-hmm. I think sometimes those inspired actions aren't always like huge things too. Mm-mm. Because like how Megan was saying, it doesn't happen overnight. And I feel like a lot of the times, like at least for me, like it starts off small. Mm-hmm. So I've also been trying to work on that as well, as like whenever I have like a thought pop into my head that I know isn't, from me, I've been trying to act on it. And like, so I had something happen last week, like, to some people, it might be silly, but like for me, it was like, I guess a big deal for me. And so lately, or right now, I'm on this like health journey. I'm trying to work out, trying to feel good and like be happy with myself. And so I'm doing this workout program. And one of the days last week, I had a headache like all day. And I had like taken all the medications and like it wouldn't go away. It was time to work out. And I really wanted to do it. And all of a sudden this thought just popped into my head. And it was, well, like, why don't you pray about it? Like pray about your headache, because what is important to you is also important to God. Even if it's as silly as a workout, getting a workout in that day. So I was like, okay. I guess I'll pray about it. So I knelt down and I prayed and I was like, please, like, make this headache go away so that I can get this workout done and so I can feel good about myself and like take care of my body and stuff. And as soon as I got done praying, like that headache was gone. and I got this burst of energy, and I was ready to go. And it was like, I don't know, the small things are a big deal to
It's
me.
amazing.
That's a big deal.
That is a big deal.
Wow, Evie.
Follow-up question.
Yeah.
Were you able to share that with your kids?
I haven't yet, but I
Great
did share.
example.
I did share it with Josh, and one of my brothers. Well, I guess both of my brothers. Like, we love to talk about spiritual things, but so that was something that was.
And now you
shared with
just
him.
shared it with the world.
Yeah.
They listen to the podcast. They will hear it.
That's really cool, Evie.
Those are the key things that like your kids will remember forever.
Yeah.
Like, we couldn't find the remote. It's always the remote.
Right.
I couldn't find the remote forever.
Or their
I
favorite
kneel
toy.
down at my bed because I'm praying.
Yeah.
It's in between the wooden frame of the bed and the mattress. It's the remote is sitting there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, y'all, if I hadn't been on my knees praying,
Wouldn't have seen it.
kids will still tell that story to this day.
That's awesome.
I gotta pray because the remote could be there.
That's awesome.
Love it.
It's the truth.
It's funny.
But you're right. If we have to, in order to receive more, we have to act on it.
And then they're just going to keep coming.
Yeah, because I could have just been like, no, like, I'm just gonna go to bed for the night, like, it's fine, or
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so cool.
yeah.
Well, he wants you to accomplish your goals just as much as you do.
Yep.
And if it's important to you, it's important to him.
Yep.
I think that's one of the biggest things is remembering that we're not doing everything alone. Like, that is so hard to think, like, life could be so much easier if I would just remember that I have every tool right there at my disposal
Yeah.
to just ask for help. And, it's just so powerful whenever you realize that. And when you remember, sometimes I'll just pray that I just remember
Yeah.
that I don't have to do it alone.
Sometimes I pray, can you please be loud today? I
Right.
said that yesterday. I'm like, my kids are so loud. And wonderful. Can you be really loud today if you need me to do something?
Yeah, louder.
I want to just be loud. It's true. It happens.
That's so true.
He'll give us what we want.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I think it's funny because when I was going through this, listening to the surrender experiment, I was in the middle of editing this huge project for photography, this 484 images of cheer pictures that I've been working on the last month. And I was like, we were praying for abundance in November, whatever. And it's February, it's March now, but this was February. And I was like, like, I guess a lot of people get really gung-ho in January. Apparently, I only get gung-ho in February because I was like, okay, we're going to be serious about the finances. I'm going to make a spreadsheet. Oh, look, I made a spreadsheet exactly last February. And
haven't touched it since.
yes, like 3 weeks in February. And then I fell off the bandwagon. And it was so funny to me because I was listening to the surrender experiment. I go to make this spreadsheet, look and find the last year's whatever. And I look at the numbers, y'all, and they were the exact same numbers from the year before.
Wow.
And they weren't good. They weren't good. But I just thought to myself, and this is the thought I had in that moment. It was, you worked so hard for what? And then I had the thought, you've done it your way. Now, can you please try it my way?
Ouch.
And in that moment, I was thinking about the surrender experiment, and I'm like,
Oh, man.
how prideful am I that I think I know better? How prideful am I that I think I know the way? What was the last year, if not exactly the same? And do I want to look next February
No.
and be exactly where we saved the
Please, no.
same place?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys, it's so hard to release the control.
Yeah. I'm a control freak too. And that book blew my mind.
Yeah.
If you are having a hard time letting go of control, that's a great one.
Because it was just such a powerful example of him, like, just do. And just to see that, it's like, it is possible.
He started out this long hair yogi living in the woods, like literally out of his van. And he's now like multi-billion-dollar conglomerate running business owner. And all of these things like were unconnected. And he just like did the next right thing. The next right thing. For all you Disney lovers out there.
Oh, goodness. Well, it is our hope that this episode has something you can pull from it on your faith journey, wherever that is. You may be at the very beginning. You may be at the middle. You may already be a pro at this. And if you are, please leave it in the comments as to any tips you may have to share with people of this community of the faith journey.
Can I share something about what I'm going through right now in the middle when it hasn't happened? Like nothing, I don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. So, I found out, I was talking about open enrollment, how I had a bunch of people that I helped and stuff. I did everything right. And I found out this last month that one of the companies that I was selling insurance for, I was not contracted with. And so they are not going to pay me commissions for any of the applications I did for them. And there were 73 applications.
Oh.
And it is going to be probably around like $15,000 for the year that I'm losing. And it hurts. And I literally burst into tears whenever I found out that they weren't going to pay me. And my husband was like, we're going to be okay. And I think sometimes on our faith journeys, we have to depend on other people's faith too. So if it's like, I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work out. They even told me today again, when I went up to the upper people, that they weren't going to pay back pay commission or for the rest of the year. So I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know what this part of the plan is, but it's stretching me so that I'm having to rely on my faith and trust and, to be continued. We'll see
And
what
to ask
happens.
for help.
But if you don't, like, things like that could be crushing if you don't have this faith and trust that it's going to work out. This has happened to me before, several years ago, but it's like, okay, one deal that God could send me could be, 3 times that much, and it's like, it makes me want to do, to be nasty and be like, well, I'm taking all my business elsewhere and blah, 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 like I'm going to just, but it's also like, okay, what do I need to do in this situation? And to have the faith to just keep walking down the road and hopefully it works out somehow.
Well, and that takes a lot of humility and being humble. Right. Because everyone else, most people would
Get angry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It might serve you well, Courtney.
Yeah. We'll see.
I hope it does.
It will. It always works out. But I mean, there's just.
I hope the CEO is listening right now. Is going to call you.
If the CEO's wife is listening right now. Just kidding.
You're a great mom. Can you help my sister?
Oh my goodness.
We're here for you. No matter what your struggle, we're here to help. You get it?
No matter where you are in the journey, just hang in there. It's going to be okay.
And keep striving. We'll see y'all soon.
Thanks for hanging out with us here at Southern Sisters. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to follow us on social media for more laughs, heart-to-hearts, and behind-the-scenes real life. We'd be thrilled if you subscribed to the podcast, left us a review, and shared it with your friends, because life's always better when we're on this journey together. Until next time, keep striving, keep laughing, and keep showing up. We'll see you all back here real soon.